Well, here's a live look at Paris, where workers striking against proposed reforms by President Emmanuel Macron to raise the retirement age. This follows a series of previous strikes and demonstrations against the proposal. And police are expecting up to 650,000 people at demonstrations. CBS News foreign correspondent Elaine Cobb is following the latest from Paris for us. So listen, Elaine, the proposal would raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. In this country, as you know, the retirement age is 65 if you're lucky. So can you explain to us, why this pension reform has been such a challenge for a number of governments and why it sort of brings out such strong emotions in France?
Anne-Marie, this is the 5th day of pension reform strikes this year, and it's going to continue. The French are very keen on the work-life balance, and they are resisting anything that is making them work longer in order to retire. And this is something that we've seen even when they brought in the 35-hour week, when the French said, yes, we will take a pay freeze in order to have more time with our families. So there is also the issue that, okay, at the moment it's 62, but in fact, most French people, 60%, don't get to retire until 62 to 65 years because you have to have worked a minimum of 40 to 42 years in order to get the full benefits. Otherwise, you have to wait until you're 67. And so it's quite a complex system between people who've worked long careers, people who started working later if they were studying. And so all of that is playing into how people are looking at, do I really want it? There's also the fact that they didn't really expect it to happen quite so soon. If the reforms are passed, they start to come in September with a gradual introduction of the new age of 64.
So Emmanuel Macron is saying, look, we need to do this. We simply cannot afford to pay out pensions for so many people. But how realistic is it for the president to get any of these reforms through? Or is raising it to 64 kind of the best case scenario? But could we see maybe some tweaks, but not all the way to 64?
Bringing it up to 64 was designed to exactly that, to be able to afford to keep it going longer. Now, many economists say that, in fact, the system is okay and there's no real need to worry about it. But the government argues that the aging population means that is just not sustainable. So the whole reform package is actually quite complex. The government has been forced to make some compromises, including tweaking the age and the number of years worked for those who started working early. If you were to retire at 64 in a couple of years' time, you would have to have started working at 20 and continued working. Now that rules out a lot of mothers who stopped working for a while, a lot of people who went on to higher education. And so there's a feeling that it just wasn't entirely equitable. And so there's been a lot of opposition, and it's being debated in Parliament at the moment. There were thousands of amendments put forward by the opposition parties. Now, many of those have now been dropped as it goes on and as the government tweaks what the reform package will be. But the Prime Minister has notably said that retirement age, minimum age of 64 will stay, with 67 still being the age at which you get full pension rights if you didn't have the full, what will be 44 years of work.
So, I mean, how long could this possibly go on for? We know that in France, they can certainly, continue to take to the streets and demonstrate. I'm thinking about the yellow vest demonstrations that have been going on for years and years and years now. What is the expectation in terms of these protests? Will they intensify in the coming weeks?
There have been calls to intensify it in the coming weeks, particularly because the debate in Parliament in the National Assembly, the lower house, is due to end tomorrow, and then it will go on to the Senate. So there are calls for a major mobilisation every Thursday for the next several Thursdays until March 7, which is the date when it's expected to go to a vote in the Senate. The far left in particular is calling for major protests, but if it is passed, then chances are it will calm down because it will then become law and gradually come into play. But we also have the situation where now school holidays across France are starting. They're staggered depending on the region. So that's already going to have an impact on the numbers out today on the streets and over the next few weeks as various parents in various parts of France are just simply on holiday, on vacation with the children.
Right. Elaine, we'll be keeping an eye on it. Thank you very much.